Welcome to the D Brown Fitcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Brown, the female results coach and the creator of the 4 Pillars of Simplicity. Thanks for listening to this week's episode, and without further ado, let's get into it. Thanks again for checking out this week's episode of the D Brown Fitcast. I'm recording this at 8:19 a.m., which is like 3 to 4 to 5 hours earlier than I normally would be recording this. And I'm doing so because we just found out that Charlie's daycare class is closed until Monday, and he is going to be running around the apartment for the next 5 days while we try to work from said apartment or work outside of the apartment and have to figure out childcare. So after I get done with sessions later on today, I'm going to probably just be spending most of the time with him that I would spending time with him that would normally be used for doing things like recording a podcast. So here we are at 8:20 in the morning. Allie just took Graham to school, and she took Charlie with her. So this is like my only free 10 minutes or so of time today when it'll be relatively quiet. So I'm taking advantage. And obviously I wasn't going to be talking about this because I didn't know about this until we woke up at 6:30 this morning. So it's a bit of a surprise to us. But it does fit into something that I do think is relevant for everyone that is listening to this. In my 28-day program, my 28-day jumpstart and my 90-day program, one of the key tenets is simply planning out and being simply prepared. It is something that I talk about. And by the way, I have a new 28-day jumpstart starting on this coming Monday. If you want to be a part of that, just let me know. I will get you all the information and do everything that we need to do to get you signed up for that. But anyway, one of the things I do in there, and I do this every Thursday with them, is I tell people to take a look back at how the previous week is or the current week is going, to see what things they can improve upon or do better in the coming week. But then the other thing I always tell them on Thursday is to start looking ahead to not only the upcoming weekend, but what's next week going to look like. And one of the questions I always ask people is, do you have any, do you personally have any work stuff coming up? Do you have any social obligations coming up? But then I always ask about, does anybody else in your household have any work, any extracurricular, or any social stuff coming up that might affect what you plan to do? Because the problem I see people make all the time is they will sit down and they will look at their work schedule and they will look at if they're in charge of picking up the kids or doing drop off. They will look at that stuff and not think about, okay, next Tuesday little Johnny has a doctor's appointment, but that was the day I was going to go to this special Zumba class, but now I can't do that. And also because the doctor's appointment is at 4:00 in the afternoon, I'm actually going to have to leave work earlier than I planned. So that means I'm going to have to move the meeting I was going to have with Susie from accounting to some other time. They just they forget about that doctor's appointment, and then it becomes like Monday afternoon when they realize that this doctor's appointment is on Tuesday, and now they've got this whole avalanche of things happening or not happening in this case because of this doctor's appointment. If you're lucky, you can call your partner and say, hey, can you take him to the doctor at this time? And if you're unlucky, they'll probably say, sorry, I can't. I've got all this other stuff coming up because I didn't think about that doctor's appointment either. And now you've got to scramble to figure out, like, okay, what am I going to do about the meeting with Susie from accounting? what time do I need to leave work in order to get him to this doctor's appointment on time? All this other stuff. And you start to rearrange what you deem is the most important. And then the thing that you deem the least important gets thrown by the wayside. So that Zumba class you were going to go to all of a sudden just does not exist anymore. I see this happen all the time, right? So what I try to do is get my clients to start thinking ahead. About, okay, that doctor's appointment is on Tuesday. Oh, okay, is there another time that this Zumba class is offered? Okay, I can put that over here. Okay, the meeting with Susie from accounting, let me email her now before her schedule fills up and suggest a different time that works for me. That way I can get that in still. And I'm going to have to move this other little thing over here. Oh, and what am I going to do about dinner that night, since we're probably going to be at the doctor's until about 5:30 and not get home until 6ish, and it's later than usual when I get home. Should I maybe cook some extra on Monday so that we can have leftovers, or am I just going to stop and pick something up? Blah blah. The sooner you start thinking about these things, you can start thinking about what are the alternatives that I can make. What can I move around in order to still get all the stuff I want to get done and all the stuff that I have to get done. But what usually happens for most people is they end up like these things become surprises to them, and when you get surprised is when everything goes out of whack, and how an appointment on Tuesday ends up affecting you all the way up through Friday of the same week. And then all of a sudden you finally make it through your work day on Friday, and all you want to do is go home and eat crappy food and drink all the wine and do all the stuff. All right. So if you can if you can eliminate as many surprises as possible and be prepared for all the different things, when you do have a totally unexpected surprise like we're having this morning and trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to do with a 4-year-old for the next 3 days before he can go back to his school on Monday, because we've taken care of all the other stuff, and we know where kind of things we can start to say, okay, yes, this is inconvenient, but because I've already thought about where these other things are going to be, I can now just start kind of slotting him in. All right, I have this meeting at 10 o'clock. I can throw on a video for him just for during that meeting. Okay, this other stuff that I'm normally doing on my own, instead of doing it at its normal time, I'll do it a few hours early, a la recording a podcast at 8:30 in the morning instead of what normally would be 12:30 in the afternoon. Get that out of the way now. When you take care of all the things that you know of and you have a plan in place for them already, any surprises that come up are easier to handle because you've already thought about all the other stuff. You've kind of given yourself space to make detours when you need to. If anybody's ever been on a road trip, the earlier that you know that the road you need is going to be closed, the better, because now you can start planning for different routes to use in order to do that, as opposed to if you're like only a mile or two away and then you realize, oh my God, that highway that I need is closed because of an accident and now there's traffic backed up. You end up sitting there in that traffic for God knows how long. So what I encourage people to do in all of my programs is start thinking ahead about these things. And I admit that even for me, someone who left to my own natural tendencies, I never think ahead about kind of planning stuff out and being on the schedule. But what I have found in working with so many people is that without having some sort of schedule, without putting some sort of plan in place, you are just setting yourself up for failure and things not getting done when they need to get done, or you being super stressed out about getting them done in a timely manner, and which leads to you not doing them as well as you possibly could have. And when I talk about planning, all it means is just basically sitting down, looking at your planner, whether you have a paper one or you just use online calendar. Like I use my Google Calendar for just about everything. And I'll show it to you guys on here. If you're listening to the podcast, you can't see this, but I'm holding up my calendar. I color code it to know when things are in person, or if things are, if it's an online meeting, so that I can just kind of look down at a glance really quickly and say, okay, this is what today looks like. And know that, and everything that happens every week is on there. Like I have the days that I do the pick up with the kids. I have the days that I make dinner. All this stuff is always there so that I always know what exactly I have to do. And whenever something new does happen, I don't say to a person, oh yeah, I can do this thing, until I look at my calendar and say, okay, you want to meet on Wednesday at 2:00. And in my head, I might be like, yeah, that works perfectly. But it has happened to me so many times where I've done that, and then I've gone back and looked at the calendar and been like, oh, actually, that is not going to work. So now whenever things like that come up, because it's on my phone and I'm never without my phone, I just look at the calendar and say, actually, Wednesday at 2:00 is not going to work. So you have to have that plan in place, or that calendar, and you have to stay true to that calendar. I know so many people who have planners and then they're like never using it, and things get all kind of flustered and disjointed, and they're always rushing. It's like, well, what do you have the calendar for? So you have to have the calendar, you have to put the plan in place, and you have to stay true to it. And by staying true to it, another thing I mean is, if you know you have to take, I forgot what the kid's name was that I used in my earlier example already, but if you know you have to take him to the doctor at 5:00, but you also know that it takes you half an hour to get to the doctor and a half an hour to get home, don't put the appointment in at 5:00. Put the appointment in at 4:30, or whenever you need to leave, until you are realistically going to be back home or back at the office or wherever you need to be to to be able to get stuff done. I've seen that happen a lot of times too, where people are like, yeah, the appointment's at 5:00, and they schedule something, they look at their calendar and they have it in at 5:00, and they schedule something that doesn't end until 4:45. And then it's like, oh, but it takes me half an hour to get there. And then now you're at the appointment late. And because you're late, they've skipped over you. So now you end up being there longer and longer. All because you didn't have that kind of moment where you're like, actually, I need to be leaving here at 4:15, 4:30 at the latest. So I need to be done with that meeting by that time. So the point here is, you need to take time and actively think about, okay, what are the things that I have to get done this week? All right, what are the things I want to get done? Okay, how do the things I want to get done, how do they affect the things that I have to get done? What do I need to move around? You need to you need to answer all of those questions ahead of time, or as soon as you possibly can. Like I said, I recommend that my clients start thinking about it on Thursday. Usually by a Thursday, you have a pretty good idea of at least stuff that's going to come up earlier in the week for you. And this is an evolving process as the week goes on. Obviously, things will come up. But as long as you have things in place, when those things do come up, you can make easier adjustments because you've already thought about where everything else is going to be. And then when you do get surprises completely out of the blue, you can it's easier to make the adjustments and start going over like alternative plans. All right, thanks again for checking out this week's episode of the D Brown Fitcast. As always, if you take something from this episode, please do me a favor and share it with somebody, whether they be in your family, your coworkers, friends. As I said last week, people you don't like, because it is good for us to help everybody, even if we don't like them. Spread the goodness. All right, I will talk to you all next week. Wish us luck over the next few days with a 4-year-old running around and trying to get work done. All right, have a good one. Peace out. Thanks again for listening to this episode of the D Brown Fitcast. I'd love to hear what you think. You can comment at any of my social media channels, which can be found in the show notes below. I want to hear the good, bad, and ugly, so don't hold back, unless you're leaving a review. Only leave good reviews. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you later.